Robin, give us 10 of your best minutes.
10 of my finest. Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. As Jeff just alluded to, I spent the last 4 years or so, I think, in capacity as chair, and been very grateful to be able to hand that off just due to my time commitments to Tim. However, one of the residual activities alongside supporting the cluster with the strategy development with Nigel Jones was to accommodate Nigel in expanding the scope of a visit that he was orchestrating. So Nigel Jones being a good friend and active participant in the cluster, despite living up in the Tewkesbury area. So one of the activities was to help facilitate a UK-US delegation visit from the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre, which is effectively an organisation established to improve and enhance cyber skills development predominantly, but not from a higher academic level, ensuring that the volume, I think, of skills is best serviced through the community colleges. So when Nigel approached me to say, the guys were coming to, they were planning a visit to London, Houses of Parliament, National Cybersecurity Centre, King's College, I think, were the venues in London, Manchester, with Manchester University, and with a focus on sort of bringing the academic community into discussions. He asked if the Southwest would be open and willing to participate, knowing, of course, that we have a vibrant and forward-leaning cluster. And of course, the answer to that was yes. So Nigel and I and the rest of the national team sort of worked together to make sure that we put on a good show for what was a really great delegation of folk. I was fortunate enough to go out to dinner with them the night before, and they were just lovely. You meet a group of people that are engaging, not pompous, a sense of fun, but are also a passion about what they do. It was a real privilege to spend some time with them. So the discussion in the Southwest was really focused on how we think about innovative approaches to engender skills development at that sort of community college level, considering downstream and upstream provision of that skills pathway, and think about how the education community engages innovatively with industry. And of course, it was a relatively easy positioning piece for us, because the three academic institutions we have in or bordering our region, University of Plymouth, obviously, Akim at Exeter University, and also Professor Rashid, who's been very active in terms of leading the research piece around the cyber body of knowledge. So, in attracting the participation of those three academic institutions and bringing in representation with Mark from the Cyber Resilience Centre, a relatively easy exercise to credibly position the Southwest and also talk about the projects that we have been running, the pilot projects we've been running in Cyber Jumpstart, Cyber Futures, and contribution to the Cyber First for Schools piece of work, which they were really interested to learn more about. The object of the meeting, which was pretty much an all-day meeting, well, 10 till 3, very kindly and generously logistically provisioned by Akim up at the Centre of Strategic Studies up in Exeter, was really looking at a set of challenges, a set of things to consider about a way forward, notably with a clear appetite from the US to ensure that this is not a one-off information gathering exercise, but the cornerstone of an ongoing, what they would call a strategic relationship that's predicated on what they call their three buckets, which was really about a really solid basis for information exchange, which is an appetite for both sides to learn the successes failures or particularly challenges, and I'll come on to the challenge areas in a second, and how we can understand the differences we have in terms of the UK and US, the things that are going well, initiatives that are in place, and how we can start to share knowledge and jointly benefit against the common objective, which is improving cyber skills with a notable and huge and significant shortfall in the capacity that the cyber sector has. So the first bucket was information exchange. The second was around joint projects and collaboration, which actually says, let's not have a talking shop. Beyond sharing knowledge and experience, let's really think about what we're doing, what they're doing, and where the two can meet. And the third was, well, that all sounds really great, but unless you structurally implement something that puts almost a governance wrap around that, then it's likely to fail. So the third consideration, or the third bucket, was a structure to what they called evergreen the relationship, to make sure it's ongoing, sustainable, constantly developing and delivering value. And clearly, the Southwest, I think they got three very different perspectives from the three visits. The Southwest is absolutely and clearly providing a very regional perspective, because we are obviously and clearly very different to the experience and the discussions they had in London, which was very much around the central institutions and the scale that London represents. Manchester was partially around a focus on the academic community, but also the representation of NCSC was actually up in Manchester, whereas we were just talking about our experiences from a large, distributed, diverse, not densely populated region, but with still a commitment to ensure that we have the right skills base being developed or consumed within the region. So the challenges that emerged, and it was a really well facilitated session by Nigel for sure. It was very open and discursive, but the sort of four challenges that emerged, and I think from both sides agreeing almost violently that they were the right ones, which was diversity. The US are very, very particularly focused on certainly gender diversity with women in cyber, and some very particular programs running in the US, but also neurodiversity being absolutely key. The second was ensuring, music to my ears, that we have a sense of performance measurement. So if we're going to do this, if we're going to examine initiatives, examine the structure to evergreen a relationship, or think about joint projects and collaboration, what is the performance measurement for this initiative, and more importantly, how do we measure the performance of anything ultimately that's going to happen? What are the goals of an initiative, and what is its impact in terms of improving the generation of skills and the ability to meet demand signals from within the market? The third was around social mobility, which starts to touch on the theme we're considering for Secure Southwest, which is looking at all levels of society in terms of mobilizing them to a career associated with cybersecurity, look at the challenges, the solutions, and how we really do consider appropriate workforce development, particularly at a local level. And the fourth one was just generally an ability to scale. As we all know, cyber security over the last 20 years has gone from very small and niche into something that I think at long last is seen as a pervasive challenge. However, the initiatives, probably in the context of the broader skills development across the digital space, it's probably still niche. And given the capacity shortfall, there is a recognised need for that sense of scale. So those were the challenges that were sort of discussed. It was really interesting to note that that the work that Bristol University have been leading with the cyber body of knowledge, they were really impressed by. I think they have equivalents in terms of platforms that have been sort of co-developed between the NSA and the National Science Foundation. So I think there's a sense that we're kind of following the same pathway, but the body of knowledge was really credible and represents a way to sort of compare and contrast what we're doing and what they've accomplished. So next steps really are for Nigel and Costas, the US representative, to compile and prepare a report, which I'm sure we'll have sight of, and the report will make some recommendations in terms of how we take it forward. But the final bit, conscious of time, was the fact that the ideas around research projects that would bring that together would be to map the structures they have in place for the equivalence of CyBOC, to really consider around funded projects that would enhance delivery and innovation, which of course we've made a small, modest but highly successful start on. How do we enable a crowd? So not sort of structural institution, which is as we've seen quite contaminated by governance, but is there a freer and more open way to generate the sort of funding that would enable wider and more diverse projects to happen, and the evolution of the toolkit. The resources they have available to engender training are quite alarming. So there's some links that will come out in the report for the resources they've got. But if anybody's interested to take a look, do drop onto ncyte.net, which is NCYTE.net, National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre.net, and you'll be able to dig through and find other resources around the sorts of things they're up to. So a really positive and constructive session, and more to say as things develop.